The decaying building loomed before them, a testament to a time long forgotten. Eldridge Academy had been shuttered for decades, its windows shattered, the walls stained with graffiti and neglect. Yet as the four friends stood before the rusted gates, a sense of anticipation and dread hung in the air. The stories they'd heard about the place, the whispers of restless spirits, and a cruel headmaster, had drawn them in like moths to a flame. Jake, the ringleader of their little group, was the first to push open the creaking gates. "This place is a goldmine for urban exploration," he grinned, holding up his camera. "Think of the footage we'll get." Sarah, his girlfriend, wasn't as enthusiastic. "I don't know, Jake. This place gives me the creeps." She glanced at the other two, Aaron and Lucy, who exchanged nervous looks but followed Jake inside. The interior of the school was a maze of dark hallways and crumbling classrooms. The air was thick with dust, and every step they took echoed eerily through the empty corridors. The faint smell of mildew mingled with something more unsettling, an underlying stench that clung to the walls like a dark memory. "Did you hear that?" Lucy whispered, her voice trembling as they passed by what looked like an old chemistry lab. The door was ajar, revealing rows of long-forgotten experiments, the glass vials covered in a thick layer of grime. "Hear what?" Aaron asked, his voice barely above a murmur. "Voices. Like whispers." Jake laughed, but it was forced. "Probably just the wind. This place is ancient. It's bound to have a few drafts." But as they ventured deeper into the bowels of the school, the atmosphere grew heavier, more oppressive. The walls seemed to close in around them, the shadows lengthening with each passing minute. The whispers Lucy had mentioned grew louder, more distinct, like children's voices caught on the edge of a dream. They found themselves in front of the auditorium, the double doors looming like the entrance to a crypt. Jake hesitated for the first time, his bravado faltering. "Should we go in?" "I don't like this," Sarah muttered, her hand gripping Jake's arm. "This place. It feels wrong." Aaron, always the skeptic, pushed open the doors. "We've come this far. Might as well see what's inside." The auditorium was vast, the rows of seats covered in a thick layer of dust. The stage, once grand, was now decayed, the curtains torn and hanging limply. But what caught their attention was the grand piano in the center of the stage. It was pristine, untouched by the decay that had claimed the rest of the room. Jake, ever curious, approached the piano. His fingers brushed against the keys, and to his surprise, they produced a soft, haunting melody. "That's impossible," Lucy whispered, her voice trembling. "That piano should be out of tune, ruined by now." But the music continued, each note reverberating through the empty auditorium like the echo of a long-forgotten memory. Sarah backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. "This is wrong. We need to get out of here." But as they turned to leave, the doors slammed shut with a deafening crash. The lights above flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. And then they saw them, figures in the seats, faint outlines of children, their faces pale and eyes hollow. They stared at the four friends with an intensity that chilled them to the bone. "What the hell?" Aaron gasped, stumbling back. The children's mouths moved, but no sound came out. Yet the whispers filled the room, a chorus of lost voices echoing through the darkness. The air grew colder, the temperature dropping so fast that their breath became visible. Jake's camera shook in his hands as he tried to film the apparitions. This can't be real. But it was. The children began to rise from their seats, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they were being controlled by an unseen force. And then, from the shadows of the stage, a figure emerged. He was tall, his frame gaunt, dressed in an old-fashioned suit. His face was pale, his eyes dark and empty. He carried a cane, which he tapped rhythmically against the wooden floor as he approached them. "Welcome to my academy," the figure said, his voice smooth, yet dripping with malice. "I'm Headmaster Blackwood. It's been so long since I've had visitors." Sarah clung to Jake, her eyes wide with terror. "Who? What are you?" "I am the keeper of these lost souls," Blackwood replied, gesturing to the children who now surrounded them. "They were my students, and they remain so, even in death." Aaron, always the logical one, tried to reason with him. "We didn't mean to intrude. We'll leave and never come back." Blackwood smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm afraid that's not possible. You see, once you enter Eldridge Academy, you become part of it, forever." The lights flickered again, and suddenly the friends were no longer in the auditorium. They were in a classroom. the desks and chairs arranged in neat rows. The blackboard at the front of the room was filled with strange symbols, and the air was thick with the smell of chalk and decay. "What? How did we get here?" Lucy gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. The headmaster stood at the front of the room, a sinister smile on his lips. Class is in session. The door behind them was gone, replaced by a solid wall. The windows were covered with thick, impenetrable curtains, blocking out any light from the outside. The children were there too, sitting at the desks, their hollow eyes fixed on the four friends. Blackwood tapped his cane against the floor, and the symbols on the blackboard began to glow with an eerie light. "Let's begin the lesson, shall we?" Jake tried to move, but his feet were rooted to the spot. He glanced at the others, their faces pale with fear. "What do you want from us?" "To teach you," Blackwood replied, his voice filled with dark amusement. "To educate you on the true nature of fear." The room began to spin, the walls closing in as the symbols on the blackboard burned brighter. The whispers of the children grew louder, their voices merging into a cacophony of despair. Sarah screamed, clutching her head as the voices overwhelmed her. "Make it stop, please, make it stop." But there was no mercy in Blackwood's eyes. He raised his cane, and with a flick of his wrist, the world around them shattered like glass. They were back in the auditorium, but everything was different now. The walls were lined with old photographs, each one depicting scenes of horror, students in various states of torment, their faces twisted in pain and terror. The piano was gone, replaced by a large, ancient book on a pedestal in the center of the stage. Blackwood stood beside it, his hand resting on the cover. "This is the history of Eldridge Academy, a history that you are now a part of." Aaron's voice was hoarse as he spoke. "We don't belong here. Let us go." "You do belong here," Blackwood replied coldly. "You chose to come here, drawn by your own curiosity, your own desire to uncover the secrets of this place. Now you must live with the consequences." He opened the book, and as he did, the friends felt a pull, a force dragging them towards it. The children, now mere shadows, began to close in around them, their whispers growing more frantic, more desperate. "Don't let them take us," Lucy pleaded, tears streaming down her face. But there was no escape. The pull of the book was too strong, and one by one, they were drawn into its pages, their screams echoing through the auditorium as they were consumed by the darkness within. The last thing Jake saw before the darkness claimed him was the face of Headmaster Blackwood, his smile wide and triumphant. "Welcome to the Academy," Blackwood whispered as the book slammed shut, trapping them forever within its cursed pages. Eldridge Academy stood silent once more, its halls empty, its secrets buried deep within its walls. The school would wait, as it always had, for the next group of curious souls to wander through its gates, drawn by the stories, the whispers of the lost, and the lure of the unknown. But for Jake, Sarah, Aaron, and Lucy, there was no escape. They were now part of the history of Eldridge Academy, their souls trapped within its walls, forever under the watchful eye of the sinister Headmaster Blackwood, and the Academy would never let them go.